Welcome to the paper Machete. I promised you a healthcare report. You're going to get a healthcare report.
Yes.
Here with the PAP files, Allie Weiss.
All right, so I want to talk to you today about a hot item on the top of every woman's shopping list these days, and that is the pap smear.
Yes.
Suddenly, thank you, suddenly it seems like everywhere you look, routine screening for cervical cancer is the must-have item of the season. They ran a shocking PSA for it at the Oscars. The drug company behind that commercial is all over the news, pushing its new vaccine on any lucky young girl with a normal pap. Paps are the new black. So a lot of us women are probably thinking, well, not for me. I've had a pap every year since I can remember. And every 6 months, if I show signs of dysplasia, it's no big. And a lot of you guys are probably thinking, I'm going to go to the bar till the vagina monologue is over. But I don't want to just talk about lady parts or cancer so much as I want to talk about bargain hunting. Because as Congress faces the final deadline on a healthcare reform vote, it may be a great time to start sharing notes on how much a pap actually costs. Yeah, it's a lot. Especially if you've had an abnormal one and insurance won't cover you. And when you watched that ad on the Oscars, you thought, I'm as far from free cancer screenings as I am from Carrie Mulligan's adorable Fred Leighton earrings. They were amazing. They were these like beautiful like chandelier things, and they just sparkled up there just like the pap smear. And yet there is a pap out there to fit just about every budget. So let's look at the three main price points for a pap smear. First of all, there's the high-end pap. This is Gucci for your coochie. You'll pay about $300 a pop for this pap. Here in Chicago, women can head down to Lakeshore Drive for a luxury pap on the Northwestern Memorial Hospital campus. Your doctor will be a motivated, youthful, well-groomed female go-getter who publishes studies about the latest advances in obstetrics and is frequently quoted in Mary Claire. Ladies will want to prepare for this pap like they would for a date. You are going to spend time in a 5-star waiting room, free water and tea, that week's magazines, naturally blonde women with impeccable highlights looking for themselves in the complimentary copies of Chicago Social, diamond rings flashing everywhere, adorable genetically modified babies in bugaboo strollers. The front desk staff is all sassy and multicultural, and they run things like NASA. Don't hate me, but I used to get a high-end pap. I had a job as a teacher and excellent benefits. My doctor was wonderful. And when they found precancerous cells, they talked me through the biopsy and told me to get a 6-month follow-up, and I did, and I was fine. They had a knowledgeable staff of RNs answering questions on the phone after hours, and it was all covered. I didn't even know how much it cost until a few years later, when I took a series of part-time jobs to supplement more artistic pursuits. Anyone? I went back to that gorgeous office and was told in a polite whisper that my low-cost temp agency health insurance wasn't really insurance, it was a discount plan, and it wasn't accepted here. Behind me in the plush waiting room, a dimpled 4-month-old baby looked up from his copy of The Economist. And then looked back down. When I called Assurant Health, all upset, the lady on the phone was like, "Girl, where are you going for a $300 pap?" I was like Jessica Simpson and Perla. I had no idea. So I got a job at Starbucks, and I got me some Etna. And I was able to afford the next notch down, which brings us to the moderate, affordable pap that pretty much everyone gets. It's the Gap pap. You'll have a good veteran doctor. They'll acknowledge most insurance plans, and they might not return your calls or run things very well, but they know their medicine. My Gap Pap doctor was great. She was no BS. I got my results a little late, but they were okay. Aetna wouldn't cover that every 6-month screening thing I had been told to stick with for a few years, but hey, it was a group plan. No individual plan would take me due to my pre-existing abnormal results, so I let the luxury extra screenings go. Eventually, I left Starbucks for a full-time job with benefits and continued along the Gap Pap route. In this price point, we're talking under $200, kind of like the old iPhone. Now, before we move on down the line, you might be wondering where Planned Parenthood fits in. I'd always thought they were discounted because the brand is so bohemian and hip and politically conscious, but they don't actually have a sliding scale. They do require health insurance, and even though they seem like a vintage clinic, they're priced like an average doctor. They're the Urban Outfitters Pap. Personally, I'd never been to a Planned Parenthood, but I'd always kept them in the back of my mind as the place I'd go if I was ever totally broke and uninsured and had a problem. Last year, I went totally broke and was uninsured and had a problem. I had taken a big pay cut to work without benefits in video for a major media company. A not-to-be-named major Chicago-headquartered media company whose founder and majority stakeholder has a penchant for smoking jackets and younger blondes. Could be anywhere. It was a cool job, but I was broke. The irony is that that company was in the same building as my old luxury pap doctor. I would ride the elevator with staff from the Gucci Coochie Pap offices, but they were as coveted and unattainable as the proverbial girls next door. So when I began to experience symptoms reminiscent of earlier abnormal pap times, I panicked. I had no extra money. I needed a cheap doctor where follow-up tests could be done without incurring piles of bills. I needed a dollar store pap. I had wanted to call a cheap pap a McPap, but McDonald's are really easy to find and cheap paps aren't, unless you know where to look. So, on a winter day, I stood freezing outside the offices of my former doctor in the unnamed media company and made about 7 phone calls to locate a low-cost clinic. I had to be assigned a doctor through a central database system, yada yada. I got an appointment. By then my lunch break was over and I went upstairs to edit videos of the vaginas the not-to-be-named media company does sponsor. My dollar store pap went down in a small clinic up in Peterson. I sat in the linoleum-floored waiting room, clutching the pay stub that proved that I made the low wage required for a $45 visit. It's hard to say how the doctor was because she had a heavy accent, and she was a little bit batshit crazy. But her frazzled staff was nice to me as I sat on the exam room table in hysterical tears because the doctor had offhandedly suggested worst case scenario and walked out of the room. But don't let my dollar store pap experience cloud your judgment. I'm sure there are excellent low-cost clinics out there for everyone. So we in America have some choices, which is great. Because depending on our lawmakers, a pap could become just one more thing the modern woman has to save up for and buy for herself, like Uggs, or a switch to organic shampoo, or 3 rounds of Bellinis at Pops. And fellas, if you have an anniversary coming up, don't go to Jared's, because these days, nothing says I love you like the gift of routine preventive health care. Happy shopping.